Unaware his wife owned the multi-billion-dollar hospital he worked at, Dr. Michael Turner refused to treat her sick mother, but risked everything to help his pregnant mistress deliver her newborn. And what she later did would crush him so deeply that even regret would arrive too late. He walked those hospital halls like a king, crowned by white coats and praise, not knowing the real throne belonged to the quiet woman he kissed goodbye every morning, his wife, Grace. He saved lives with steady hands and steel-sharp confidence. But when her mother arrived, gasping for air, trembling, and desperate for help, he turned away, unaware he was denying the owner's mother, unaware he was denying his wife's mother. And while Grace's eyes filled with silent ache, Michael hurried instead to his mistress, Vanessa. Glowing with pregnancy, he hoped would elevate his name, his future, his legacy. But why did Grace never stop him? Why did she swallow pain instead of power? Why did she allow him to deny her mother treatment? Why did a woman who owned everything choose to watch him fall? Viewers know the betrayal, but not yet the motive, not yet the revenge, not yet the moment everything flips. He saved another woman and her newborn, but could not save himself. And the question that pulls us forward, the one that grips the soul, is this. When a man is blinded by pride, what happens when the woman he underestimated finally opens her eyes? The morning sunlight cut across the marble floor of Crestview Medical like a scalpel. Clinical, unforgiving, exposing everything. Doctors moved with purpose. Nurses rushed with charts in hand, and the scent of sanitizer and ambition floated through the air. Dr. Michael Turner entered the lobby like a man born to be watched. His white coat fluttered behind him, stethoscope draped like a metal urn, not worn. He nodded to interns, signed documents mid-stride, speaking with a confidence that tasted like promise. "Morning, Dr. Turner," a young resident called, almost breathless. Michael smiled, eyes gleaming. "Another day to save lives. Don't fall behind." People admired him, his precision, his certainty, the way he seemed engineered for success. But beneath the polished exterior was a hunger that never slept. He was the kind of man who saw the world in tiers. VIP patients deserved priority, wealthy donors deserved access, and those without influence waited. And his wife, gentle, unassuming Grace, fit into a category he couldn't define. She wasn't dazzling or ostentatious. She wore calm like a garment. She moved through rooms without claiming them, and people often forgot she was there, except when she smiled. Soft, patient, too forgiving. Months earlier, Michael had introduced her to his colleagues simply as Grace, never once mentioning marriage unless necessary. It wasn't malicious, just convenient. Grace rarely corrected anyone. She seemed content being invisible. Michael preferred it that way. Attention belonged to him. But shadows moved beneath that quietness. Grace always sat in the hospital boardroom during charity events, not among guests but beside decision-makers. Her last name appeared engraved in the lobby's glass donor wall, but Michael assumed it was an old relative. She faintly smiled whenever Michael boasted about earning his place, as though she knew something he didn't. That same morning, Grace stood at the hospital entrance, pale but composed, holding her mother's hand. The older woman coughed into a handkerchief, crimson speckling the white cloth like falling roses. She leaned heavily on Grace, breath shallow. Michael saw them, brows slightly pinched with inconvenience more than concern. "Grace," he said, voice professional, distant, "you should have called an ambulance." "She refused," Grace whispered, panic trembling beneath her control. "She trusts you, Michael." For a brief heartbeat, so brief it almost didn't exist, his eyes softened. But then it vanished beneath duty, schedule, ego. "I have a VIP surgery in 30 minutes, he replied. "She'll have to wait like everyone else." Grace's voice cracked. "She's struggling to breathe," he sighed. "Then take her through ER admissions. I can't personally handle every patient, Grace. You know that." Her mother looked up at him, fragile but dignified. "I don't need special treatment, son. Just compassion." Michael paused just long enough for hope to flicker, and then walked away. Grace held her mother tighter. This was the first cut. The wound would deepen soon. Grace stood frozen in the hospital corridor long after Michael's footsteps vanished. The echo of his voice lingered like a judgment, clinical, cold, undeserving of the woman who had loved him with such purity. Her mother's breathing rattled against her shoulder, reminding her that pain waits for no permission. Nurses hurried by, unaware that the woman trembling by the wall owned every light, every tile, every life-saving machine under that roof. "Come, Mama," Grace whispered gently. "We'll get you a bed." Her mother nodded weakly, eyes soft with years of silent endurance. "Don't blame him," she whispered. "Everyone reveals themselves eventually." The words planted their first seed of foreshadowing. As Grace guided her mother toward ER admissions, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, a coincidence too cinematic to ignore. People bustled past, unaware of the storm quietly forming in the owner's shadow. A clerk glanced at them before returning to paperwork, asking for insurance details and next of kin, as if speaking to ordinary patients. Grace signed the forms without hesitation, using an internal executive code she rarely touched. The receptionist's eyes widened as the screen recognized the authorization. Her demeanor shifted instantly, fear and respect fighting for dominance. "Ma'am, I apologize. I didn't realize." Grace raised a hand gently but firmly. "Please, treat her as you would any mother in pain. Nothing more." It was not humility, it was restraint. One day the world would know who she truly was. She just didn't want that day to arrive through anger. A doctor arrived with a wheelchair. He greeted Grace with a respectful nod, the kind reserved for people whose influence is understood, even if not spoken. Grace avoided recognition often. She dressed like simplicity because she remembered the weight of poverty pressed into childhood skin. Flashback bled into memory like light through stained glass. Little Grace stood barefoot at 12 years old, watching her mother scrub floors in an understaffed clinic. She remembered how her mother got sick, how nurses whispered about lack of insurance, how doctors walked around her as though compassion was currency she couldn't afford. Grace spent nights sleeping on benches outside hospitals, listening to coughing echo through corridors while her mother fought to stay alive. It was there she learned an unforgettable truth. Hospitals healed those who could pay. Grace vowed to build one that healed everyone. The memory dissolved as Michael reappeared at the opposite end of the hallway, laughing with nurses, confidence radiating like a man secure in his rising throne. He didn't notice Grace watching. He didn't see her mother being wheeled away. His life was too loud to hear consequences, whispering. Vanessa appeared beside him, glowing, youthful, hand resting on her pregnant belly. She whispered something in his ear, and he smiled. A smile Grace hadn't seen in months. Her mother watched too, eyes knowing instead of angry. "You give too much of yourself," the old woman murmured. Grace swallowed. "Love shouldn't require receipts." "But love," her mother exhaled, voice fading with exhaustion, "should never make you invisible." Grace didn't answer. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was the storm-gathering pressure behind glass. And though Michael still walked through his world like owner and king, destiny was already crossing names off his throne's foundation. He just didn't know it yet. Evening draped the hospital like a slow descent of truth. Warm lights glowing through glass, shadows elongating across polished floors. Visiting hours thinned, footsteps softened, and the hush of fading voices made the building feel like it was listening. Grace stood outside her mother's room, hands clasped, mind replaying Michael's dismissal like a needle stuck in a wound. Doctors passed by with gentle nods, none aware they were nodding to the woman who signed their paychecks. Grace didn't reveal identity not because she couldn't, but because she wanted to see people raw, unperformed, unfiltered. If they treated she and her mother with respect only after knowing her wealth, it wouldn't be kindness, it would be cost. The ICU doors slid open, and her mother wheezed softly on the bed, oxygen mask fogging slightly with each shallow breath. Machines blinked like small distant stars, life contained inside fragile, blinking lights. A nurse adjusted the IV and smiled warmly at Grace. "She'll stabilize," the nurse said softly. "She came just in time. You got her here just in time." That sentence pressed like a blade to Grace's heart. Michael could have examined her. Michael could have been that salvation. But the man she loved didn't choose them today. He chose status. And in that moment, the part of Grace that worshipped him began to die quietly. Flashback seeped in. Young Grace, freshly married, sitting on a small apartment balcony while Michael held her face and promised, "We will rise together. I'll make sure the world knows your worth." His words felt like gold then, heavy with hope, pure with intent. They lived simply, eating instant noodles, laughing over shared dreams. Grace worked in hospital administration disguised as a junior analyst. Michael studied late, sleeping on textbooks, dreaming of headlines where his name glowed like achievement delivered by destiny itself. Back then, his ambition charmed her. She believed ambition shaped greatness. She didn't see how it could later become a weapon sharpened by pride. The sound of laughter snapped her out of memory. Michael and Vanessa walked past the ICU glass. Unaware, Grace stood behind them. Vanessa's hands cupped her belly tenderly, and Michael's hand rested protectively over hers, the gesture soft enough to pierce. "I want Dr. Collins for delivery," Vanessa said, voice airy with entitlement. "He's the best. I deserve the best." Michael chuckled. "No, we deserve the best. This baby is our future. My future." The phrasing landed like thunder. Grace's mother's fingers twitched toward her. Grace turned to her, wiping a stray tear. "He was a good man once," her mother whispered faintly. "Power changes some people. It reveals others." "And what does it reveal in me?" Grace asked. "That love can blind or it can break," her mother breathed. "One day, you'll choose which." The hospital speaker rang. Emergency alert. A pregnant patient in distress. Nurses sprinted. Michael was paged. Vanessa's contractions had begun unexpectedly early. Michael rushed toward the elevator, adrenaline and fear coating his movements. Grace watched his back disappear. The same back that once shielded her from every hardship, now walking into a future she wasn't part of. The camera, if this were filmed, would cut to Grace's stillness. Not weak, not crumbling, just quiet. The type of quiet that happens right before a storm tears the sky open. Michael had no idea the storm had his name written on it. The hospital alarm screeched through corridors like fate announcing itself. Nurses scattered, wheels squeaked, and doctors converged toward maternity like moths drawn to crisis. Michael fast-walked with surgical certainty, Vanessa's breathing growing sharp beside him as contractions tightened their grip. She clutched his arm, eyes wide. "Michael!" "It's early," she gasped. He steadied her with what seemed like tenderness. "I'm here. You're safe. I won't let anything happen to you or the baby." Grace, standing unseen near the nurses' station, watched them disappear into delivery prep. She didn't move. Her stillness radiated deeper than fear, deeper than betrayal. It was the silence of a woman finally seeing the truth without fog or excuse. Her mother's voice echoed from hours earlier. "One day you'll choose whether love blinds you or breaks you." Grace could feel the decision forming inside her, like slow lightning. Down the hall, Michael briefed the on-call obstetric team with authority. "She's high risk, preterm labor. I want Dr. Collins leading this, and I'll assist where needed." A nurse hesitated. "Dr. Collins is in surgery. The only person with clearance to override and pull him mid-procedure is—" Michael cut her off. "Then page the board." The nurse swallowed. "We need authorization from the primary owner." Michael waved dismissively. "Then get whoever signs off on that. We don't have time." If irony had a voice, it would have laughed then. Grace approached the operating wing slowly, almost poetically. She wasn't there to intervene yet. She was watching the man who once vowed to choose her always, now choosing someone else without hesitation. Not out of love, but ambition. He wanted a legacy, and Vanessa offered a faster path to it. As she stepped closer, she heard Vanessa sob inside the room. "What if the baby doesn't make it?" Michael held her hand tighter. "I won't let that happen. You and this child mean everything to me." Grace stopped breathing. Her mother lay fighting for life because he refused to help. Yet here he poured devotion like water into another woman's hands. Flashback threaded itself through her like cold wind. Michael had once knelt before Grace on their small apartment floor, hands trembling as he said, "I want a family with you someday, a child with your heart and my resilience. We'll grow old together." Grace believed that promise like scripture. Now he offered that future to someone else. Inside the delivery room, a monitor beeped rapidly. Fetal distress spiking. Staff scrambled. "We need neonatal ICU on standby." "Blood pressure dropping. Prep an OR." Michael's voice cracked with urgency. "Where is authorization? We need a surgical team now." The nurse returned, pale. "No authorization, no OR. The only signature allowed on emergency override is the hospital owner." Michael froze. For the first time all day, all year, uncertainty entered his eyes like an infection spreading fast. Grace stood behind the glass panel, watching him drown in the system he thought he controlled. Not with vengeance, with awakening. That moment was the shift, the turning of the axis, the quiet beginning of his fall. The delivery room smelled of blood, antiseptic, and fear. Vanessa screamed as another contraction tore through her, clenching the sheets with desperate fists. Sweat glistened on her forehead, and her mascara streaked like war paint across pale skin. Michael hovered beside her, gloves half on, mask dangling under his chin. A surgeon undone by personal stakes. "Where is the authorization?" he demanded again, voice cracking raw. The nurse stammered. "We've paged the owner's office, but..." Michael slammed a gloved hand against the wall. "But won't be fast enough. Do you expect me to stand here and watch her and my child die?" The word "my" hung in the room like a razor. Outside the glass, Grace absorbed it like slow poison. She didn't flinch, didn't cry. The pain settled deeper than tears could reach. She stood with quiet posture, the kind born from a lifetime of swallowing storms. In the early years of their marriage, Michael once told her, "If we ever have a child, I want to be the hero in their story." Grace believed him, believed in the goodness he used to carry like a torch. But somewhere along his ascent, compassion became currency, and people turned into metrics. Her mother's monitor beeped steadily inside ICU down the hall. Recovering under care, she quietly authorized. The contrast sliced like surgical steel. One woman fighting for life with no husband beside her, and another woman fighting for life with the husband Grace once thought was hers. The intercom crackled overhead. "Code red maternity, neonatal team on standby." Vanessa's eyes found Michael's, fear drowning rational thought. "Please, don't let me die," she gasped. "You won't," he insisted, voice firm but trembling. "I'll fix this. I just need authorization." He turned to the surgical unit secretary. "Call the board. Call admin. Call anyone." Her voice was barely a whisper. "There is no authorization except one." Michael froze. "Then get me the owner." The nurse swallowed. "The owner would have to be notified directly. No one else can approve life-saving override under Section 14B. And like a slow-moving earthquake, realization crept into viewers' minds. But Michael remained blind. Grace's heels clicked softly against the tile as she stepped closer to the maternity wing, drawn like gravity toward destiny. Not to punish yet, but to witness truth unfold without denial. She remembered her wedding day, white dress, trembling fingers, Michael's vow beneath stained glass light. "I will protect you and your family as if they were my own." Everyone cheered. Grace believed love made promises sacred. Now her mother lay in ICU gasping for breath, saved not by Michael's vow, but by systems Grace herself built. Vanessa, innocent yet entangled, screamed in a room filled with panic. And Michael, king of confidence, stared at the closed doors of power he never realized he did not hold the key to. A resident rushed out with panic. "We're losing fetal heart rate. We need authorization now." Michael's breath shook for the first time. Fear replacing arrogance, like blood replacing air. Grace watched, not with satisfaction, but clarity. The man she loved was disappearing, replaced by the man he always was. A nurse sprinted down the hallway toward administrative offices, papers trembling in her grip like frightened birds. Michael paced outside the delivery suite, each footstep heavy with rising panic. He had always been a man whose confidence filled hallways. Now he looked small inside them, swallowed by urgency he could not control. Vanessa screamed again, voice cutting through walls like broken glass. "Michael, please, don't let me die. Don't let the baby die." He tore at his mask. "I won't. I swear I won't. Hold on." Inside the observation corridor, Grace leaned against the cold glass. Her breath fogged lightly against it, as if the world itself exhaled through her lungs. She could save them with a single signature. One stroke of ink. One order given. And Vanessa's life could be secured. The baby delivered. Michael's future restored. But her own mother, the woman who once sold her wedding ring for medication, had begged for that same compassion today, and Michael denied her. Not because he couldn't treat her, because she wasn't important enough. Flashback unraveled slowly. Years ago, Grace stood outside Crestview as ambulance doors closed around a stranger. She was still just an unseen owner then, hidden behind her father's legacy, still learning the world she now commanded. She overheard two nurses whisper, "Poor woman couldn't pay. They refused the surgery. It's sad, but policy is policy." That was the day Grace vowed to restructure the hospital's values. Healthcare should never bow to wealth. She spent years writing access laws, emergency override rules, funding programs for the uninsured, and the world praised Turner Hope as a beacon of compassion. Irony now smiled like a villain. Michael, who pledged love forever, became the embodiment of everything she built her hospital to fight against. Another contraction ripped through Vanessa, her voice shattered. "Get the owner. We'll pay anything. I don't care the cost." Michael clenched her hand. "You're going to be okay. I'll get them. I'll get them." He rushed back into the hall, grabbing a passing administrator. "Find the owner. Do you hear me? We have a life-threatening labor case." The administrator kept his tone respectful but firm. "Dr. Turner, the owner is unavailable. We've sent notifications, but no response yet." "Unavailable?" Michael barked. "Where is she? Who is she? Bring her here." A nurse hesitated, a second too long, but long enough. "We are not permitted to disclose owner identity without authorization." Michael's pulse thundered. For years he assumed the hospital operated because he kept it breathing, but truth had been hiding in plain sight. His career lived under someone else's heartbeat. Grace's reflection shimmered against the glass behind him, a silent queen observing her kingdom. The camera, if this were film, would tighten on her eyes. Not vengeful, but illuminated by painful clarity. Her mother's voice from earlier echoed like prophecy. Everyone reveals themselves eventually. Michael revealed himself today, and soon Grace would reveal who she truly was. A resident burst from the OR. "We're out of time. If we don't get authorization in the next minutes, we could lose both." Michael's hand shook, the first crack in the fortress of arrogance. Grace stood still, her silence powerful enough to bend the scene around it. He had placed his future in the hands of a mistress. He had abandoned the one person who could save it, and the storm that would destroy him had already begun. The maternity wing felt like a lung-holding breath, expanding with panic, collapsing with fear. Nurses moved like adrenaline through veins. Doctors barked orders sharp as scalpels, and every monitor beep sounded like a countdown to something irreversible. Vanessa's screams bled into the hallway, raw and animal, the kind of sound that made even seasoned surgeons swallow hard. Michael stood outside the operating room, fists clenched so tight his knuckles whitened. He had never felt powerless in this building, never felt like anything could happen without his permission. But now power stood just out of reach, and time moved like a noose tightening. A passing nurse whispered to another, not realizing he could hear. "If the owner doesn't sign authorization, we'll lose the baby. And her." Michael whipped around. "What did you say?" The nurse froze. "Dr. Turner, Repeat it," he demanded, voice trembling. "Say it again." She swallowed. "The owner is the only one who can authorize emergency OR." Owner. That word stabbed deeper than warning. It was irony dressed like punishment. He had never bothered knowing who ran this hospital. Never cared who controlled policy, payroll, infrastructure. To him, the system existed for one purpose: to hold him up. He thought he was ascending a throne. He never realized he was climbing a ladder leaning on someone else's wall. Behind the glass, Grace watched him unravel. The man she once adored, once believed incapable of cruelty, now begged an invisible power for mercy. The same mercy he denied her mother without hesitation. Her heart wasn't vindictive, but it was breaking in a way that made healing impossible. Grace remembered a night long ago, rain tapping their apartment window, Michael studying late. She brought him tea, sat beside him, and whispered, "Take breaks. You're human." He looked up at her, gentle then, grateful. "You're the reason I'll make it, Grace," he murmured. She kissed his forehead, believing she was building a life with a man whose future would honor her heart. But futures rot when built on pride. A door slammed, a secretary rushed toward Michael with a tablet. "Dr. Turner, we attempted contact again. No response from ownership." Michael's voice cracked. "She'll die. My baby will die." He didn't say Vanessa's. He said my. Grace felt the words like cold water, not because of betrayal alone, but because she realized something deeper. He never saw her as future. She had been placeholder, shadow, silent support beam for a man who dreamed of mirrors, not windows. Inside the OR, a doctor shouted, "We need decision authority now." Michael pressed both palms to the glass, forehead leaning against it like a man at confession. "Please," he whispered to no one, in everyone, "please, someone find the owner." Grace inhaled slowly, the kind of breath taken before truth is spoken aloud. The hallway went quiet, a silence that felt celestial. She stepped forward, not as wife, not as wounded heart, but as the woman who owned the ground beneath his feet. Michael turned at the sound of her heels. Their eyes met and everything began to collapse. Michael stared at Grace as if she had materialized out of air. Familiar face, unfamiliar power. Her expression was not rage, not bitterness. It was the expression of someone who had stopped trying to be understood and instead chose to be seen. The hallway lights haloed behind her, soft gold against her dark hair. Yet nothing about her glow felt fragile. "Grace," he breathed, chest heaving in panic. "You shouldn't be here. Vanessa, she needs critical intervention. We're waiting for authorization. For the owner. If we don't get it, she and the baby could—" Grace didn't blink, didn't tremble. The love that once softened her gaze had thinned into something sharper, dignity refined by betrayal. She stepped closer, each heel click slow, controlled, sovereign. Michael looked suddenly smaller, as if years of ego had shed all at once and left him naked in realization he hadn't reached yet, but would. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he demanded, voice thinning. She answered quietly, too calm for the chaos around them. "I'm looking at a man I used to know." The nurses around them paused, sensing electricity shifting. No one spoke. The hospital breathed through pulsing machines and whispered shoes. Michael swallowed, eyes flickering with confusion that was beginning to curdle into fear. "Grace, please, whatever this is, we can discuss later. Right now, I need to find the owner. They're the only one who can give authorization to open that OR." A painful irony, almost poetic. Grace exhaled slowly. She remembered being 24, sitting beside Michael in a cafe, both broke and brilliant. He held her hand across chipped wood and whispered, "One day I'll run the biggest hospital in the state." She smiled back then, but now memory cut differently. He wanted to rule a kingdom, never knowing he married the queen. "Michael," she said softly, but her tone held steel beneath silk. "Do you know who owns this hospital?" His jaw twitched. His arrogance, even drowning, tried to surface. "Some board-controlled billionaire foundation." She shook her head. "No. One person signs override approvals. One person holds operational command. One person controls funding. Just one." The hallway thickened with silence. The nurse holding a chart stilled, pulse visible in her throat as understanding sharpened. Michael stepped closer, grabbing Grace's wrist, desperation cracking his composure entirely. "Then tell me who it is," he begged, voice trembling. "Tell me so I can save my child." She looked down at his hand, the same hand that once brushed tears from her cheek, now gripping her like possession, not partnership. Slowly she removed his fingers from her skin. My child? She repeated, voice barely more than breath. He froze, realizing what he'd said, what he hadn't said, what it revealed. Grace's eyes shimmered, not with weakness, but with the pain of truth finally accepted. You didn't ask about my mother, she whispered. You didn't fight for her. You didn't care unless it served you. Michael shook his head rapidly. Grace, please, this isn't the moment. It's exactly the moment. Behind the glass, Vanessa screamed again. Monitors shrieking warning. Doctors calling out time left like a countdown. Michael looked between the door to crisis and the wife he never really saw. He was begging for the future with one woman while standing in front of the woman he destroyed. And Grace finally spoke the beginning of a truth that would shatter him. The owner you seek is standing right in front of you. The world around him collapsed into soundless weight. Michael froze as if time itself refused to move forward without processing her words. His face drained, lips parted, but empty of language. For years he believed he was climbing toward power. For years he mistook his reflection for elevation. Now the truth stood in front of him, wearing the name he barely valued. Grace Turner, wife. Grace Turner, owner. Grace Turner, the life he betrayed without blinking. You, he whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. You're the owner? Her silence was confirmation enough. It wrapped around his lungs like cold wire, every breath suddenly expensive. Nurses watching shifted uncomfortably, doctors exchanging looks of disbelief. One of the administrators dropped a pen and didn't bother picking it up. Shock made statues of everyone. Grace continued looking at him, but her expression was unreadable. Not angry, not triumphant. Her face was the calm of a woman who had learned pain deeply enough that peace became armor. I built this place for people like my mother, she said softly, eyes never leaving his. People with no wealth, no power, no voice. Michael stepped forward, trembling. Grace, please, I didn't know. That is the problem, she answered. You didn't want to know. Flashback rippled behind her gaze. A younger Michael, ambitious, bold, yet kind in ways that felt golden then. She remembered celebrating his first published research paper, dancing in their small kitchen, flower on her dress, music loud enough to drown out worries. He spent nights telling her he would conquer the world, and she believed he meant with her, not through her. Years later, he stopped asking about her day, stopped noticing her silence, stopped holding her hand in crowded places. Then he stopped seeing her at all. Now in the hallway of the empire she built, reality carved its judgment into him with every passing second. Inside the delivery room, alarms escalated. Heart rate dropping, oxygen saturation falling, 2 lives slipping through fingers of time. A nurse approached Grace carefully. Ma'am, authorization approval is required immediately. If we delay further, Grace nodded. Her pulse was steady. Heartbreak had already burned through its chaos. Michael grabbed her arm in desperation. Grace, please, I'm begging you, sign it. Save them. Save my baby. Grace turned slowly, voice trembling in a way that held centuries of unshed pain. Did you beg when my mother was gasping for air? He opened his mouth. No answer came. Because the truth was simple. He didn't. He saw a sick old woman, not a life worthy of urgency. He saw a wife too quiet to matter. He saw importance instead of humanity. And now he saw the cost. Vanessa screamed again, voice cracking like thunder through sterile walls. Doctors shouted timestamps. Every second counted. Michael looked between the woman in labor and the woman he once vowed to love. Decision, consequence, destiny collided like storms. Tears streamed down his face, not noble, not heroic, but fearful. Grace, please, he whispered brokenly. I was wrong. I failed you. I failed her. Don't punish them for my sin. Grace inhaled, long, steady, heartbreaking. This was not revenge. This was revelation. She stepped forward toward the OR, decision in her posture. And Michael watched, helpless, soul unraveling in terror of what she might choose. Would she sign? Would she walk away? Would she let fate finish what betrayal began? One truth remained. The power was hers and the world would never be the same again. Grace stood inches from the OR door, one signature between life and death. Betrayal and mercy. The hospital lights reflected off her eyes like twin moons, unblinking, calm in a way that frightened even the walls. Not silence of hesitation, silence of clarity. She could end Michael's future here, just by doing nothing, by letting time run its natural course. Her mother's voice echoed like a heartbeat inside memory. Love shouldn't make you invisible. And now, she was seen. Michael approached slowly, as if she were a mirror showing him a version of himself he never wanted to meet. His voice shook when he spoke her name. Grace, you still love me, don't you? The question tasted like desperation, a plea for the comfort she once gave freely, but love twisted into something unrecognizable when trust is shattered. Grace turned her head slightly, studying the man she married. His ambition, his betrayal, his fear. I loved who you were, she whispered. I don't recognize who you've become. He flinched. Genuine pain, raw, unfiltered, crossed his face, and yet the OR monitors screamed again, reminding them both that pain was not exclusive. Vanessa's cries grew weaker. A baby was losing time. A nurse with trembling hands approached Grace, holding a digital pad. Ma'am, please. The baby's heart rate is crashing. Grace looked at the screen, red warnings flashing like sirens of fate. She thought of Vanessa, not just a mistress, but a woman who believed Michael's promises, who carried life with hope. She thought of the unborn child, innocent, unchosen, undeserving of punishment. Grace was many things. Quiet, underestimated, wounded. But she was not cruel. She took the pen. Michael gasped, hope flooding him too quickly to be safe. Thank you. God, Grace, thank you. I swear I'll never forget this. She interrupted gently without anger or theatrics. You won't have the chance to. She signed not for Michael, but for the child. Authorization approved. Doctors tore through doors as emergency personnel rushed Vanessa to surgery. The hall exploded into motion. Gurney wheels ringing like thunder, gloves snapping, surgeons shouting orders like battle cries. For a moment, Michael looked like a man resurrected. Then Grace stepped back. Her mother's ICU room glowed softly down the hall. Grace walked toward it like someone moving toward a new life. Not fast, not fleeing, just leaving behind what no longer belonged to her. Michael stood frozen, chest heaving. Grace, wait, he begged, voice cracking open. Please, don't walk away. She didn't turn. Didn't look back, because there are moments a woman must choose herself. When my mother needed you, she said, voice calm, half turned just enough that he saw her profile. You let her suffer. I won't do the same to your child. Michael stumbled forward, collapsed against the wall, sobbing quietly, understanding finally carving into bone. He was saved by the grace of the woman he broke, and no apology could rewrite that truth. Grace reached her mother's room, closing the door softly, while behind her, Michael was left with the weight of every decision he made, every vow he betrayed, every wrong now illuminated in unforgiving light. Vanessa and her newborn might live, but Michael's life would never be whole again. Hours slipped by like slow rain on glass, each second a wait, each minute an unspoken sentence. The maternity floor dimmed into evening hush, footsteps softer now, exhaustion replacing panic. Vanessa was out of surgery. The newborn, fragile but breathing, slept beneath glowing incubator light like a tiny sun fighting through storm clouds. Michael sat outside the neonatal unit, hair tousled, surgical scrubs stained with sweat and regret. His hands trembled, not from medicine, but from memory. Grace's silhouette walking away, not rushed, not angry, just finished. It hollowed him, carving out every certainty he once owned. A nurse approached gently. The baby is stable. Vanessa is resting. It was close. Michael exhaled in shattered relief. Thank you. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. You know she saved them, right? The owner, your wife. He blinked, breath stalling. Wife, owner, savior. 3 titles he should have cherished. One he never saw, one he betrayed, one he now feared losing forever. Down the quiet ICU corridor, Grace sat beside her mother, head resting lightly on mattress edge. The warm hum of machines was comforting. Life holding on. Her mother reached out, wiping a tear from Grace's cheek with trembling thumb. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "You saved a child. That's who you are." Grace nodded slowly, though pain still lived behind her ribs. "I didn't save him," she murmured. Her mother smiled faintly. "You weren't meant to." Flashback crept in, not to romance but to warning. Grace's late father once told her, while signing over his empire, "Build a hospital where humanity outranks status." She promised him, built everything on that vow. And today proved she upheld it, even when her heart cracked to do so. Outside the ICU door, whispers grew. Word spread fast. Doctors who once overlooked Grace now looked with awe, respect, fear. Administrators fumbled with paperwork, correcting tone mid-sentence whenever she passed. Power she never used now moved like gravity. People leaned toward it, and soon someone asked the question no one had courage for earlier. "Is Dr. Turner married to the hospital owner?" Whispers bloomed into wildfire, some in disbelief, some in scandal, some with sympathy, all with curiosity. Michael approached slowly, as if nearing a door he may not be welcome behind. He stopped at the ICU window, seeing Grace lean over her mother with a tenderness he once claimed as his foundation. He knocked lightly. Grace didn't turn. He opened the door halfway, voice barely air. "Grace, can we talk?" She finally looked at him. Not angry, not cold, just distant, like memory instead of present. He stepped inside, shoulders bowed, not in humility, but surrender. "I know I failed you," he said. "I can't fix what I broke. I just want to understand how to move forward, if there's a way." Grace studied him long enough for silence to sting. "There is a way forward," she whispered. Michael's eyes flickered with fragile hope. Grace stood, smoothing her coat with steady grace. "But it will not include you." She walked past him like closure given form, not rushed, not dramatic, just final. Michael remained still, breath shaking, as the realization settled painfully. A surgery saved the child, but nothing could save his marriage, and the world would soon learn why. Morning arrived like judgment, sharp, bright, unforgiving. The hospital, usually buzzing with routine rhythm, felt charged, watching itself from within. Whispers traveled faster than lab reports. Staff clustered near elevators, eyes wide, voices lowered. "Dr. Turner's wife is the owner? He refused to treat her mother? And helped his mistress instead? God, what happens now?" The world that once applauded Michael was now shifting beneath his feet like cracking ice. The board summoned an emergency meeting. The long mahogany table gleamed like polished truth. Executives sat stiff, attorneys present, financial directors with folders thick as evidence. Grace sat at the head of the table, quiet, composed, unshakable. She didn't need to raise her voice. Authority radiated from her like sunrise. For years she chose gentleness. Today she chose power. Michael entered last. The room stiffened. He looked smaller without his certainty, like pride had been surgically removed. When his eyes met Grace's, silence thickened. Board chairwoman Daniels adjusted her glasses. "Dr. Turner, we reviewed the incident. You denied critical care to the owner's mother while prioritizing treatment for your mistress." Michael swallowed. "My decision was medical. I didn't know." Grace spoke without venom. "You didn't ask." He shut his eyes, because that truth cut deeper than accusation. He never asked, never cared to. Legal counsel slid documents across the table. Termination papers, ethical breach reports, malpractice reviews triggered by negligence. The hospital that once lifted him now prepared to remove him. Michael's voice broke. "Grace, please, I devoted my life to this place." Her gaze stayed steady. "You devoted your life to yourself." Flashback hit him like defibrillation. Grace supporting him through med school, 3 jobs to pay rent, surprising him with stethoscope engraved with, "For every life you touch." He remembered her cooking dinner after 12-hour shifts, waiting with tired eyes but warm smile. He remembered her whispering, I'm proud of you, even when he forgot to ask how her day was. Regret began its slow, torturous climb through his chest. Board member Lee leaned forward. We cannot retain a physician who compromises ethics based on personal preference, especially when the owner's mother was involved. The vote wasn't long, unanimous, final. Grace signed last, elegant and unwavering. Dr. Michael Turner, terminated. Privileges revoked. Access revoked. Future erased with a signature. He exhaled, a sound like something dying. After the meeting, Grace stepped out into the hallway. Staff parted like tide around her, eyes holding reverence and sorrow. Michael followed her quietly, devastated. Are you really ending everything? He whispered. Grace turned, eyes soft, not merciless, not triumphant, simply sure. When you walk past my mother, you walk past our marriage. Michael felt knees weaken. Grace, I was blind. And now you can see, she breathed. But sight doesn't restore what pride destroyed. She handed him one last document, divorce papers. His hands shook. You're leaving me. She met his eyes, calm as a closing chapter. I didn't leave. You did. Then she walked away, not as a wife, but as a woman reclaimed. Michael stood in an empty corridor. No title, no power, no shield, only consequence. The hospital swallowed him, just as he once swallowed compassion. Michael left the hospital not as a doctor, but as a man stripped bare. The world outside, usually just background noise to his ambition, felt enormous now. Too bright, too real. Cameras glared like judgment. News vans already gathering, reporters whispering scandal like wildfire ready to feed. He kept his head down, but whispers chased him. That's him, the one who refused his own mother-in-law care. He lost everything for a mistress. Imagine the shame. He walked faster, but shame walks inside, not behind. At home, silent, suffocated rooms that once held laughter. The house felt like a museum of a marriage he never appreciated. Grace's framed photos, books she loved, coffee mugs she collected, 2 toothbrushes side by side like a promise now broken. Divorce papers lay where she left them. Center table, between wilted lilies and yesterday's forgotten peace. He collapsed onto the couch, head in hands. For the first time, memories weren't nostalgic. They were hauntings. Grace asleep on his chest after long shifts. Grace cheering at his residency graduation. Grace waiting up with dinner when he was late. And he never asked why she ate alone. He had taken love like oxygen. Constant, invisible, assumed. And now he was learning what suffocation felt like. His phone vibrated relentlessly. Calls from colleagues, journalists, board members now distancing themselves. Vanessa texted twice. Baby is stable. Where are you? I need you. Michael couldn't respond. He didn't deserve a future built on betrayal. Hungry, hollow, he walked into the bedroom. Their bedroom. The one where promises once lived. He opened the closet. Half of it was empty now. Grace's absence loud as thunder. She took her clothes but left her silence. Left space where devotion used to be. He fell to the floor, chest heaving, finally breaking open like a dam long overdue. Not dramatic, just human. Human for the first time in years. Flashback struck again. Michael watched Grace studying medical journals with him years ago, even though she wasn't a doctor. She wanted to understand his world. She wanted to be beside him, not behind. He remembered her saying softly, "If I ever make you feel alone, tell me." He never realized she felt alone instead. A knock at the door snapped him back. Vanessa stood outside, pale, exhausted, holding a baby swaddled in cotton. Relief and fear tangled in her eyes. "The baby needs you," she whispered. "We both do." He stared at her. The woman he destroyed everything for. But instead of triumph, her presence felt like ashes in his throat. She was not villain, only mirror. A reflection of his disloyalty, not cause of it. Michael's voice shook. "I don't know if I deserve to be a father." Vanessa's breath hitched. "You saved us." He looked away. "No. Grace saved you." The truth tasted like grief. He invited her in, not with joy, but responsibility. The baby whimpered softly, small, innocent, unaware of storms it was born into. Michael held the child, hands trembling. Not with pressure of surgery, but weight of consequence. A father now, yet unworthy. A husband no more. A doctor gone. A name stained. His fall was complete, but redemption waits for those who face their ruins. This child was beginning, but grace was ending, and Michael would spend a lifetime learning the difference. Months passed, but regret grew like ivy across Michael's ribs. Slow, invasive, impossible to ignore. His medical license wasn't revoked, but no hospital would hire him. Not after headlines labeled him, "Doctor denies care to owner's mother treatment given to Mistress' first husband unknowingly, betrays CEO wife." His name became a warning, not a reference. He applied to clinics, small practices, even remote aid units. Each rejection a reminder of who he chose to be. Eventually, he found work in a rundown community clinic on the outskirts. Peeling paint, flickering lights. A waiting room filled with people who looked like Grace's mother once did. Patients without insurance. Patients he never prioritized before. The irony wasn't punishment, it was education. He arrived daily at dawn, sleeves rolled, stethoscope old, salary humble. No interns followed him, no administrators praised him. He treated cracked hands, neglected infections, malnourished children, coughing elders, and each patient's gratitude cut deeper than applause ever did. One gray morning, a frail old man gripped his wrist. "Doc," he wheezed, "you look tired, but your eyes, they look awake." Michael blinked, something inside unraveling quietly. The man smiled, toothless but sincere. "You care," he whispered. "Pain wakes the heart." Those words stayed with him. Meanwhile, Grace rose higher. Not by revenge, but by vision. She expanded Turner Hope into free outreach units, funded rural maternal care, built scholarship programs for nurses. The city praised Grace Turner, the compassionate CEO. Her face appeared on billboards, not glamorous but strong, gentle, powerful. Interviews asked her, "What motivates you?" She answered softly, "I know what it means to be unseen, and I want no patient to feel that way." People loved her for it. Michael loved her more for it. Too late to stand at her side. He watched from a distance, not stalking but learning. He followed every press release, every development, every milestone, because Grace wasn't just surviving. She was becoming who she always should have been. At night when Vanessa slept and the baby breathed soft beside them, Michael sat alone with a single thought. She didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. Vanessa, now mother to his son, was kind, patient, unaware of the wounds still bleeding inside him. She tried to make space for a future, but even she sensed his heart lived elsewhere, not in love, but in regret. One evening, she touched his hand gently. "You don't talk about her," she murmured. Michael stared at the table, voice low. "There's nothing left to say. I lost a woman I didn't deserve." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Then maybe one day you must face her, not for forgiveness, but to show you've changed." He looked at his sleeping child. Change wasn't optional, it was required, because every heartbeat reminded him of the moment he chose ambition over humanity, and every sunrise reminded him Grace chose humanity instead. Michael was learning one patient at a time. Grace was healing the world one policy at a time. Two paths once joined, now divergent, but fate rarely leaves threads unfinished. A charity outreach banquet approached, first of its kind, hosted by Grace Turner herself. Michael stared at the invitation mailed to the clinic. No message, just his name handwritten in gentle ink. Grace had not forgotten him, but the question was no longer whether she loved him. It was whether she would ever look at him again without pain. The banquet hall shimmered with soft gold light, warm, elegant, full of life. Crystal chandeliers swayed gently overhead. Violins threaded through the air like silk, and white lilies adorned every table as symbols of healing. Turner Hope banners stretched high, a testament to compassion rebuilt stronger than bone. Michael stood near the entrance like a shadow among brilliance. Modest suit, tired eyes, hands clasped with humility instead of pride. Vanessa stayed home with the baby. She understood this night was not hers to witness. This was not reunion. It was reckoning, growth, maybe grace. Grace emerged from the center walkway like dawn itself. Black gown simple yet commanding. Presence effortless, not dramatic. She didn't walk like a woman proving anything. She walked like one who no longer needed to. The room applauded her. Reporters took photos. Board members stood tall. She delivered a speech about expanding maternal health outreach, about saving lives others overlook. She never mentioned betrayal, never named him, never asked for pity. She spoke only of hope. Michael listened, throat tight, heart heavy. Every word reminded him of who she always was and who he failed to see. After speeches, donors mingled. Laughter bubbled like champagne. But Michael stood still until Grace noticed him. Their eyes met across the room. Not electricity, not hatred. Something deeper. Recognition. History. With gentle grace, she excused herself from conversation and approached him. Each step toward him felt like pages turning to the final chapter. When she reached him, she stopped at arm's length. Close enough to remember, far enough to protect herself. "Thank you for the invitation," Michael whispered, voice barely breath. Grace nodded. Everyone deserves a chance to change. Her calm was not cold. It was healed. The wound was scar now, no longer bleeding. That hurt more than anger ever could. "I am sorry," he began, voice quivering. "Not because I lost you, but because I never deserved the love you gave me." "I see that now." Grace's eyes softened. Sorrow, not longing. "I never needed perfection, Michael. I needed partnership, compassion. You chose ambition instead." He blinked rapidly, tears collecting. "I wish I'd realized sooner." She inhaled slowly, kindness wrapped in reality. People learn when they're ready, not when they're loved. Silence settled like snowfall. Quiet, soft, undeniable. Michael held out a small envelope. Employment recommendation papers. No plea for return, no request for status. Only proof that he now helped low-income families receive care. Proof he transformed. Grace accepted it, reading carefully. "You're doing good work," she murmured. He nodded. "Because of you." She offered a faint, wistful smile. The kind people give when goodbye is love in another form. "I hope you find peace," she said gently. "Not through me, through growth." He exhaled shakily. Understanding this was closure. Grace turned to walk back into a world she now led with strength, rooted in pain, watered by endurance. Michael watched her go, not with entitlement, but gratitude. He lost her forever, but he finally became the man she hoped he could be. The camera, if one existed, would close on his face, broken but changed, humbled but alive, while Grace moved forward into her future, luminous and unbound. No revenge, no hatred, just justice and healing, and a quiet truth carved into both their lives. Grace did not destroy him. She rebuilt herself. He destroyed himself, and then rebuilt slowly, painfully, because she showed him how.